Welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith. I'm a multi-dimensional channeler sharing my gift to assist others to connect and work with their whole being, helping bring them into a beautiful way of high-frequency living. Immerse yourself in an hour of nourishment that feeds your spiritual journey and invites you to embrace your empowered soul. You'll feel armed with new understandings for how to shift from pain to love as we explore topics from shamanic sound healing to gut health. Are you ready to take accountability for the impact that we have on the world around us and learn new tools and techniques to feel whole again? Of course you are, and you're in the right place. Pure Intuitive Talk starts now. Hey everybody, welcome back to Pure Intuitive Talk. I'm your host, Trish Smith, and you're tuned into Transformation Talk Radio. Today we're covering the subject of not feeling so happy during the holidays. And so myself personally, I've experienced all ends of the spectrum. I think most of us have. We've experienced holidays where we feel joyous and we feel like we're on top of the world and everything is in alignment and things are going well for our family and our friends, and we're basking in that, right? We're relishing in that joy. But what happens when the holidays come around and we're not quite feeling joyous and we're feeling sad and we're experiencing grief or loss? For myself personally, it's been off and on for the last several years that I've experienced those holidays myself. If it hasn't been from a major loss that I've experienced when someone has passed away and I'm grieving that loss, it's come from estrangement in my family. And I know a lot of people deal with that. And I think the best thing that we can do is really own it. So I have some suggestions for us today, and I'll walk through those. And I actually have a couple of practices that I'd like to share with you. But I just wanted to basically come on and explain and maybe even give you permission, if you haven't been able to give yourself permission, to go ahead and own it, to go ahead and allow yourself to have the feelings that you have. That seems to be one of the best ways I've been able to deal with it myself. Is by not forcing myself into a superficial place. We tend to do that in the society that we live in, and it's not always the healthiest option. There are times that it's good that we press forward. There are times where it's good that we, suck it up, right? And just shift our frequency and move into a space that feels more joyous. But if we're doing that and it really goes against everything that we're feeling, we can cause more turmoil for ourselves. And then sometimes we ourselves, or we witness in others, people start lashing out from that place. So sometimes if we're experiencing deep hurt, if we're experiencing major loss, and we're trying to stay on this superficial level of, I gotta keep it together for the holidays. I've got to show up. I've got to do all the things, right? I've got to buy all the gifts or whatever it is that we plan on doing to make the holidays seem normal. Sometimes we end up becoming overwhelmed, right? Or resentful. Even sometimes it doesn't feel good to have to do things that don't feel good to do, right? So by honoring the truth within ourselves that we are experiencing hardship during the holidays, it gives us a place to feel safe within, right? Sometimes we don't feel super safe out in the world and out with other people, but we need to be able to feel safe within. We need to be able to feel like we're being true to the core of ourselves and that we're honoring where we're at as an individual. So like I said, if you are not feeling like you're able to give yourself permission, you have my permission to be sad, to be grieving, to be all of the things that you are experiencing during the holidays. Just because these dates come around on the calendar doesn't mean that we have to force ourselves into becoming a version of ourselves that we're not feeling like we're in alignment with, if that makes sense. So I would like to offer this to you guys as a listener. It's something that I chose to do the other day with my daughter-in-law, and of course, it worked out very nicely. I think it's important to have conversations, right? To when we're owning it, to sometimes extend that accountability when by means of having a conversation with our loved ones. So for myself, the other day, I had a conversation with my daughter-in-law, and I explained to her that during the holidays, it's very difficult for me being estranged from my parents, and that there comes a lot of pain with that. And I find myself still trying to put together a holiday for my family. So in my case, I am the matriarch in my family. My mother has abandoned my branch of the family, and my grandmother has passed away. So in my bloodline, I'm the matriarch for my family, which leaves me feeling like I have the responsibility to make the holidays happen for my children and their children. And that can be stressful, right? And I know we all feel that. I think a lot of women, men included, feel the stress of the holidays, of making this magic happen for everybody around us, right? But let us not forget that we are a community, right? That we have each other. And so if we're able to offer our truth to our loved ones, they can come in and support us and then relieve that stress of feeling like we have to carry all of the burden ourselves. So I sat down with my daughter-in-law. I mean, we were already sitting down, but I decided to talk to her about how I felt about the holidays. I know sometimes the holidays can feel difficult for her as well. Her family lives in a different state, and I know she misses them sometimes, right? So I just explained to her, I said, sometimes it's overwhelming, and I'm trying to make the holidays happen for everybody, but I'm experiencing my own pain. And of course, she said, right, and I shouldn't have been surprised, and I greatly appreciate her words. I'm gonna try not to cry. Gosh, every episode, you guys, every episode I end up crying. But she said, Mom, she said, you don't have to do everything yourself. You know, we can all bring a dish. We can all pitch in. Whew, sorry. But what a relief even to hear those words, right? It felt like a relief to my soul to be able to express that with her and to be able to have that conversation, and the delightful experience of her offering her support and her help. Okay. So I want to encourage you as a listener to have those conversations with your family if you're experiencing an overwhelming amount of stress, right? So as much as we love the holidays, as much as we love the season, as much as we enjoy the lights and getting to have those extra times where we spend with our family and friends, right? It brings a long stress sometimes, especially when we've subscribed to this culture where we feel like we have to buy all the things, you know, and we all know it's become quite commercialized, and it's been one of those progressions over the last few decades where we've watched the holidays turn into, you know, competing with the Joneses and feeling like we have to buy everything under the sun. And even though we know that's not true in the back of our minds, sometimes we find ourselves getting into that place where we feel like we have to buy so much stuff, the biggest, the best. Did we, you know, got to outdo ourselves from last year, whatever. So giving ourselves permission to not subscribe to that, not subscribe to the conditioning of our culture, and choose for ourselves what feels best for ourselves, what feels best for our family. I think more of us than less are experiencing that same feeling of like, we don't need to do all this. We're adding unnecessary stress, right? So I wanted to share with you guys today a breathing technique that it has been proven to be the most effective way to push the body into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, pulling us out of the fight or flight. It is called cyclic sighing. Okay. During the holidays, when we're experiencing more than usual stress, it becomes more important to lean on our practices that help our body get out of fight and flight, right? So if you guys would like to practice with me, we'll go ahead and practice what we call cyclic sighing. There's other names for it as well. I like to tell people when I'm teaching this in classes that we've all done it before. We've seen it before. We've witnessed it in toddlers and even sometimes our animals, but we've all done it ourselves. We just didn't have a name for it, right? It's the body's natural way to calm itself down. So maybe you've heard a toddler sobbing uncontrollably. Maybe you yourself have had times where you're sobbing uncontrollably. And what does our body do? Right? That's the basis of the cyclic sighing. So as a breath work practice, we have decided that we're going to take 2 deep, fast inhales, 1 long exhale. We can exhale through our nostrils, we can exhale through our mouth, but that is what the cyclic sighing breathwork technique looks like. 2 long, fast inhales, 1 long exhale. By practicing this breathing technique, we're pushing the body into that parasympathetic nervous system. So if we're feeling stressed out, if we're having high levels of anxiety, we can turn to this breath work and intentionally shift our body's nervous system over into that parasympathetic nervous system. So I would like to remind people that these practices, when we're doing breath work, are free. We have them with us all the time, right? So it's an easy way that you can shift your body into experiencing less stress, right? Reducing that stress, reducing that anxiety with that simple practice. And it's something that you can do anytime, anywhere for free. You can also do it when you're out in public without, I guess, causing a scene, right? If you're concerned about appearing strange in public, you're having, a lot of anxiety arise, we can return to our breath, right? Anytime, anywhere, and we can do it subtly. We can do that without the whole room noticing that we're doing it. We can slow down our exhales. When we're slowing down that exhale, we're stimulating the body into that parasympathetic nervous system. So I just want to remind everybody that's listening, if you're experiencing high anxiety, if you're experiencing a lot of stress, take the time to do that breathing technique, especially while you're experiencing it. But the real value in these breathing techniques comes from practicing them on a regular basis, right? On an ongoing daily practice of utilizing our breath work, we will find ourselves, when we're experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety, turning to them more naturally. So I like to suggest that maybe upon awakening, when we're lying in our beds before we've gotten up in the morning, out of our bed, practice some deep belly breath work for maybe a few minutes. And then especially too, my favorite is before I go to sleep at night, practicing that breath work, those deep belly breaths, right? And slowing down the exhale, pushing the body over into the parasympathetic nervous system really helps for a great night of sleep. But again, it helps us to stay in the practice of turning to our breath. So we're going to go to a break, but it's been a pleasure having you tune in. Thank you for being here. My name is Trish Smith. I'm the host of Pure Intuitive Talk. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about how we are going to choose to leave politics away from the table this holiday season. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm your host, Trish Smith. You're listening to Pure Intuitive Talk. Right now you're tuned into Transformation Talk Radio. And before we went to break, we practiced what we call cyclic sighing. And when we got back from our break, I promised to go ahead and talk about politics, right? That's what everybody wants to talk about. So we experienced in 2020 I say when the world shut down. That's how I'll phrase it. When the world shut down. So we went from 2020 and the shutdowns and people experiencing all kinds of different emotions and needing places to talk about those and finding healthy outlets and unhealthy outlets for it. And then just recently here in the States, we experienced, an election, right? So politics have been, for some reason, on everybody's mind. And as much as I can appreciate people feeling passionate about them, sometimes what I feel like I witness in others is that they're experiencing a deeper heartache. And what happens is their surface conversation becomes about politics. So I have a couple of suggestions. One, if that's you, if you are the person that's experiencing something under the surface, right? A deeper loss, a deeper heartache, if there's pain in your heart and you're experiencing that, and you find yourself being attracted to the turmoil of what politics has brought into conversations over the last handful of years. Not that it hasn't for all the time. That's why they used to say, we don't talk about politics and religion, right? And I appreciate that we've gotten ourselves to a place that we're talking more about things that are important to us. I think it's a beautiful thing. But as we all know, there's a time and a place for it. And for me personally, I believe that our connections are more important than the surface level politics that we're all engaged in some way or another, right? So most of us have our set of beliefs, right? And we know what feels important to us. But what's more important to us, right? Like who won an election, or who believes in what, or our time together during the holidays. My answer would be our time together during the holidays. So like I said, I have a couple of suggestions. One, if that's you, if you're the person that can't get the politics off of your mind, look under it. Oftentimes, if we're experiencing a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, if we're experiencing a lack of patience, right? It's time to go within. It's time to look under it. Why am I having all of this surface frustration, all of this surface level anger? And sometimes underneath that, it's what we find is, a real place within us that is very passionate about something that feels just, right? And then sometimes it's actually something else that's causing the deeper pain underneath, and we're choosing to focus on what feels a little lighter on top of that. So if we've experienced great loss, if we have mental illness in our family, right? Whether it's ourselves, whether it's a loved one, and we're experiencing the turmoil from that, sometimes it's easier to choose to be frustrated about the smaller things in life than the one thing that's really deeply rooted that's causing that pain and suffering. And so if it's us, we're the problem, right? Our pastor used to say, if you have there's a person, every family, right? That's the one that's like, oh, wait, when they come to the gathering, everybody's dreading their presence. And then he used to say, if you don't know who that person is, it's probably you. And of course we all laughed. But that can be true, right? Sometimes we are that person that's experiencing deep pain, and then our surface conversation becomes about other things that are not addressing that pain, but expressing our frustrations about other things in the world. So my best suggestion is to stay with that pain that's causing that, to allow ourselves to be sad. It is okay to be sad during the holidays. It is okay to feel hurt, to feel pain. It doesn't really have a time of year, right? Sometimes we're experiencing great loss around the holidays, and we're grieving and we're mourning, and that's okay. So my suggestion, if you're witnessing someone else, right? If you're witnessing someone else, you know that they've experienced great loss. You know that they're experiencing deep hurt within their family structure, or maybe with a close friend or something. And we're recognizing, okay, we know this person has suffered this great loss. They seem very short lately. They seem like they're, talking about things that they're, extraordinarily passionate about all of a sudden, even though we know the source of that problem is the grieving, right? Or the mourning. Allow them some grace, right? So giving others the same grace that we would give ourselves. If we know I'm having a lot of pain right now, I know it's manifesting in other ways, our behaviors start showing it. And that happens for most of us. I don't think, there's very many people that their behavior doesn't reflect their pain in some way or another when they're experiencing great loss. But we have to be mindful of it, right? So I just want to offer the point of grace, right? Giving grace to people that we know are experiencing very deep losses, very deep pain, and maybe not take their politics so personally, right? Sometimes they come to the table groveling about politics when we know that underneath that, what's really going on is a pain that they're not ready to talk about. And so for myself personally, I try to model talking about the things that are hard, hoping that it will give permission to the other people to go ahead and just talk about the things that are really hurting, so that we don't end up caught in the behaviors of, being rash with one another over something as silly as politics. Because sometimes the discussions can become quite petty, and what we really need is connection, right? During the holiday, statistically speaking, depression rates go up, stress rates go up. So what is the antidote for depression? Well, there's a couple of things. I also always have to talk about sugar because there's a ton of sugar around the holidays, right? And what is that doing? It's creating inflammation in our bodies. Inflammation in our bodies includes inflammation in our brain, right? So if we're putting all that sugar into us, let's expect to be more emotional because we're creating inflammation in our brains. So it's going to have that effect. So let's be mindful of that also. But the other thing too is really, really, really owning where we're at, bringing that to the table so that we can deepen our connections, right? It's easy to feel like we're super depressed during the holidays when we feel disconnected. And it's easy to feel disconnected if we're not having conversations. So if we're willing to take the time to have the conversations with our loved ones, hi guys, looking forward to seeing you guys, or even when you show up on that day, looking forward to seeing everybody. I'm really struggling right now. It's going to mean a lot to me to get to be with you guys. Nothing means more to me than some good hugs right now, right? So when we gather for the holidays, let's focus on our connections. Let's focus on building those and sometimes rebuilding those. Maybe the last holiday didn't go so smooth, and so we're smoothing over this holiday, right? I don't know. But deepening our connections will help with fighting depression, right? Seasonal depression that people go through. Now, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so that also means for me making sure that I get plenty of sun, right? Getting that D3 in my body. But I want to encourage you to stay committed to love. I've been doing the same thing with myself. The holidays are difficult for me. And so I myself am also committing myself to love, showing up for love, showing up for my loved ones with love in my heart, and remaining open, honest, real, and true to myself by showing up in everything that I am right now. And sometimes that is with a hurting heart, and just letting my family and my friends know that that's where I'm at. And so we can support each other in that way. The best thing that I've learned about people, I have to say, is when they don't know, right? They don't know. And that's true for all of us. When I don't know, I don't know. And so we can't expect our loved ones to know that we are really experiencing deep hurt and pain if we don't share that with them. So let's give them the opportunity, if it's us having a hard time, to meet us there, right? If we say, hey, I'm having a hard time, more than likely they're going to greet us with a hug. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. I love you. Get in here. Let me give you a hug. And if we know of someone in our family or our circle, right, our loved ones that has experienced loss, is having a hard time, reach out and offer that too. Because let's remember that the holidays really need to be about the love. That's the whole reason for these holidays, is focusing on love. Well, it's not all the reasons. There's lots of religious reasons for these holidays, and we can honor those too. But while we're together, let's honor each other, have grace, offer forgiveness, all of those beautiful things. Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This will be my last show of the year. But just know that all of you are in my heart, in my thoughts, and my prayers. I want to see connection. I want to see people rekindling. I want to see relationships that have become estranged come back together. So reach out to your family, reach into yourself, make love at the forefront, right? Let's let love be our focus. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Trish Smith. This is Pure Intuitive Talk, and you're tuned in to Transformation Talk Radio. Thank you for listening to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith, your Pure Intuitive Guide. Come back and join us for encouragement to take responsibility and to connect to your whole being. Remember that every moment is the right moment to choose peace, acceptance, and forgiveness. We all have the courage to look deep within, get real with ourselves, and make upgrades to our ways of interacting with the world. It's been my privilege to share this hour with you. For more information about me, go to pureintuitiveguide.com. That's pureintuitiveguide.com. Thanks again, and we will see you here next time on Transformation Talk Radio.